Good evening, everyone. I hope you all are doing well. And today we are joined by a very special guest and who has secured very well in ethics paper. So today he will be guiding all of you in that. और यहाँ पर अभी 5 क्वेश्चंस डिस्कस करेंगे जिसमें कि 2 से 3 PYQs भी हैं. So please be in the session, be attentive, ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा interact करो and you can also ask your doubts at the end of the session. ठीक है? So, Animesh, you can begin now.
Yes. Also just thank you, Virendra sir and Nitya, first of all, for giving me this opportunity to get connected with the students and aspirants. Always feels delighted to talk to you, sir. Apart from that, as sir mentioned, since most of you would also be writing mains this year and few others would be writing next year, we'd like to keep it very crisp and to the point and not like talk about strategy and everything, which are in my opinion, you are writing means you would know most of it. So but before we start on and start writing answers, I would give a few things which I believe would have helped me in hindsight in ethics in particular. Is one, using your GS knowledge and your syllabus keywords in your answers in both section A and section B. In whatever dimensions you're putting in, try to make it more from a perspective of ethics, where you bring in different keywords and different topics that is mentioned in the syllabus itself, both in section A and section B. Bring in the headings like corruption, EI, attitude, aptitude, social influence, persuasion, transparency, accountability, righteousness, ethical morality, laws, all of these concepts, this again and again, bring in these perspectives. And while you're giving an argument on those dimensions, always mention an example or use your GS knowledge to support your argument. So in ethics, there is no hard and fast rule whether you want to write in point wise or in paragraph. People have diverse opinions. I personally stuck to point wise in most of the questions. But if you're writing point wise as well, then give your main argument as a in 2-3 phrases, and then explain the argument. Your argument is a major thing. Your example is a supporting yet one of the most important components of your argument, but your general argument should be your major highlight of your point. So use that format, give a keyword, the phrase to introduce that subheading, and then write one-liner argument and then write an example. This is a must. You'll have to provide example. The example could be in the form of a data, statistics, court judgment, a case study, or a school of thought or philosophy, anything. That is really well, and this is something that I've seen, which I had consciously emulated from previous topper Shruti Sharma's way of writing answers as well, and she had really got good marks in ethics too. So credit goes to her. Yeah. And another most important thing, which I kind of realized late, but I keep on saying which is important, is using school of thoughts while writing ethics. Try to, because the competition has gone to that level that now everybody is getting prepared with quotations, with examples and everything. But try to go one step ahead and emulate the different school of thoughts of philosophy wherever possible. Either you can, and if you are writing an argument, give an example and write in bracket, this is pertaining to this school of thought. Or as a different point also, you can write from a philosophical foundation, this is a philosophical angle, this can be analyzed by so and so point. And people who do this usually limit themselves to Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, or Immanuel Kant, J.S. Mills, deontology and teleological ethics. I would say go one step beyond that and take in ideas from other school of thoughts as well. Similarly, there is a conception of Stoicism by Marcus Aurelius that talks about self-fortitude, courage, and perseverance. So make a table of that, and I can provide you with the same as well. I had done this at very end of my preparation. So even though if you see my answer copies also, I would have imbibed in some amount, but later on during the last 1-2 weeks I started doing it a bit more as well, and I would have tried in the final answers too, and I think that makes a difference. So that is what I would say, that you should keep in mind to give you that edge above what is something which is an average mark ethics, because ethics provides you with the scope. People who are getting selected are scoring in 90s, and also people are scoring in 140. So there's a huge scope you can maintain with ethics. Before we start, uh, do you have any specific doubts with respect to ethics?
Sir, there's one or two doubts. One is so answer writing is one aspect, and then reading toppers copies is another aspect. So how do we balance that?
First, what did you mention first? Reading
Toppers no copies
and
and writing answers.
so yeah. So what I would say that in ethics, the more you practice and brainstorm, the more better you'll get at this. It's no point that you collect more and more content. It would be futile if you would not be able to just present that on paper. So I would say go through, at least if during mains you're writing 2024 also, whenever you're getting time, at least go through one topper copy. So around, if you like make it as diversified as possible, like you scan through around 10-12 toppers and see at least 1-2 copies of them. One YouTube playlist I would recommend is School of Life's Western Philosophers. I had seen, you can see they have Indian philosophers as well. You can use that. Um, I had read one book, like skimmed through that, but I would not recommend that in a way. Did not really add a lot of value, but somebody who is a beginner can read any book. I had read D.K. Balaji sir's book, which was a good book, but I'd say the content can be much better. And I had taken use of a 2021 batch topper, Jayant Nahata. His notes I have utilized massively for ethics in particular. So the question, very straightforward. There is nothing to have any dilemma about it. It's asking, what do you mean by the term dedication to public service? How is civil service different from other services? Anybody would like to volunteer any definition that you wrote for the same?
Sir, just so dedication means you pay more attention to the services than your personal or other needs.
So basically, civil services or public services is very different from the other services. From the preparation to valuing the services, it required continuous efforts and something very different for the service of the nation. It's more over the service of nation. That's different from the other services. It's not a job; it's a service. That's the difference.
Right, but like make it two different structures, like two parts to this. One explaining the dedication to public service, and another separate section altogether, uh, talking about how civil service is different from the other services. So yeah, a simple definition would do if you had a uh, quotation for dedication per se, that you could have written, or using anything like, for example, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel calling the civil service as a steel frame of the country that ensures that they be dedicated to the service while rooted in the constitutional morality, and use all their aptitude and attitude in the public services. On those lines, you could have written by a quotation, or any such thoughts. Because since it's civil services, you have a lot of quotations and a lot of these perspectives, historical and contemporary as well, that try to pitch in the introduction as well, like steel frame of India, for example. Then try to talk about, what do you mean by dedication to public services? What are the different dimensions which has been there? And for each of these public service, try to have an example as well. So we have an example of IAS Chaudhary, who had worked in order to reduce the dropout rates in Maoist Dantewada district as well, which ensures that they're committed to their work. So one dimension is commitment to their work and contribute to the social well-being. That could be one of the points. Just a second. Yeah. You do not have to write philosophical perspectives like this separately, but you can add in different like philosophical perspectives in various points. How? For example, adherence to rules and regulations. There you could have given the perspectives of Immanuel Kant in lines of deontological ethics, which talks about one's duty, one's universality of moral laws, and where means are important in ensuring ethical morality. So there you say being honest and like having integrity is also being dedicated to work to ensure the rules and regulations are being implemented and personal gains are not an hindrance to the same. And then right in the lines of Immanuel Kant. Secondly, you could another write that for enhancing the social well-being of the people, where you are ensuring that marginalized people are also getting benefit out of it. The benefit, the public's the dedication should be ensured in a way that maximum number of people get the maximum benefits, which is in line with the utilitarianism of J.S. Mill. Similarly, you can mention, like if you want to mention this as a separate point as well, you can, that dedication to public services falls within lines of Aristotle's cardinal virtues, which is in accordance to we have courage, we have moderation, justice, and wisdom. So that also you can write as another point. Other points you can write from everything that you read: empathy, compassion, using of emotional intelligence, having like in empathy you write how it is important for the civil servants and the public servants to ensure the marginalized people get also, the voiceless also get their voice and the representation. Talk about compassion, talk about how there is innovation and the agility to change. Example, incorporation of technology. uh, Another point you can write, going out of the way and in crisis management, for example. Then write emotional intelligence, how an officer sang national anthem during the CAA protests and that led to the crowd management. So these are also the dedication of with the civil services. Another point could be also that how prioritizing your professional work over personal work and in cases of emergency. We had seen a lot of examples. IAS Pandey reducing her maternity leave during the crisis of COVID. So similar examples you can give. Multiple IAS officers, IPS officer, IRS officer, other civil servants in general. You can note examples for every point. But other philosophers, how where you could have used, for example, you could have used Amartya Sen's capability approach, where you are saying it's because of the dedication of the public servants, where you are giving freedom as development to the marginalized community. You are ensuring sanitation, health, education, in terms of as developmental goals, are ensuring that people live a life of dignity. That is also dedication to public service. Yeah. Also, you can use Gandhiji's talisman, for example, here as well. Use of technology too. Yeah. And when you're talking about differences between civil services and other services, as yes, as you mentioned here, civil services is not like just another job and vocation. Rather, it is a public service duty. It is duty to the nation. What are the differences? You'll have to not just mention it one line, you'll have to break down out into various concepts. One, what is the motive of the one? The other services could be for the are profit driven. Here, there is a public accountability. Second, your scope of administration or scope of accountability. A public servant or a civil servant is accountable to the entire citizens, and while he's or she is working for the entire community, but in case of other services, you're accountable to your organization. Service delivery. You have to prioritize efficient, equitable service delivery as a part when you are a public servant. Similarly, the other areas of impartiality and neutrality that you can give examples of UPSC, give examples of Election Commission of India, all these institutions who have upheld the spirit of public services to show how they're different from any other common services. And in conclusion, you can write few of the reforms for civil services. You can mention few of the committee's recommendations as well, that how civil services servants could be more ethical. For example, having the periodic review of them, or skilling them with Karma Yogi portals and educational platforms. And then you can always quote with something what has been talked in contemporary way, what the Honorable Prime Minister says, that civil servants should embody the spirit of reform, perform, transform. That encapsulates the idea of the new order that we have. So there is a change from rule-based system to a role-based system, where rather than having red tapeism in bureaucracy, you'll have to have green carpets in the bureaucracy, opening up the ways for new development. So this is how you can end up your answer as well. Yes, sir. As sir rightly pointed, we emphasize on dedication as well. Bring in the philosophical foundations from the perspectives. For example, we talked about Aristotle's cardinal virtues, where you then second, you have your deontological ethics, which talks about having adherence to rules and means, universalities of law, adhering to that. We have Gandhiji's talisman as well, which talks about how the poorest of the poor has to be empowered. The perspectives of that. You can add in Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel as well, where he calls and using dedication and amalgamating civil services, how they become the steel frame of the country. Using Amartya Sen's capability approach as well. So these are some of the philosophical foundations where you can bring out the perspectives of dedication and show how civil servants' prerogative is in order to ensure dedication is upheld.
Sir, myself, Mankirat Singh. Sir, can I speak in Hindi?
हाँ, yes, पक्का पक्का, sure.
सर, जैसे आपने कहा कि मल्टीपल एग्जांपल, सर मेरा जो पेपर कभी कंप्लीट नहीं हो पाता सर, जैसे बहुत टाइम मेरा थिंकिंग में जाता है ऐसे एग्जांपल में। जैसे आपने कहा कि अगर 8 पॉइंट्स है तो 8 एग्जांपल्स है। तो रिसेंटली मैं एक स्ट्रेटजी में इंट्रोड्यूस हुआ, उसमें उन्होंने कहा कि आप एक पार्ट के साथ एक अच्छी एग्जांपल दे दो सिविल सर्विस के रिलेटेड एथिक्स के पेपर में, तो दैट विल बी गुड। तो अभी मुझे सर वो ठीक उसमें मेरा पेपर टाइम पे हो रहा है, बट मैं उसमें सर कंफ्यूज हूँ कि शायद मेरी वो प्रैक्टिस कम है कि जा मैं अनअचीवेबल कर रहा हूँ कि 8 पॉइंट्स के साथ 8 एग्जांपल्स मैं दे ही नहीं सकूंगा। शुड आई प्रैक्टिस ऑन दैट, और यहाँ एक वाला ठीक है?
First is paper completion is important. Matlab, that is like it's better to write थोड़े relatively lesser best answers, but 20 के 20 आप answers लिखिए, rather than आप 3 question छोड़ के आ रहे, that would be not useful, or that's not wise. But आप अगर नहीं हो पा रहे हर point के साथ examples, but try to give as many as possible. एक देख के मत छोड़िए, but at least मतलब the example does not have to be written पूरे sentences में, the argument आप पूरे sentence में लिखिए, पर आप उसका example 2-3 words कुछ phrases में लिख सकते हैं, और example आप सिर्फ words, सिर्फ phrases, percentage पे data उनको भी use करके आप दे सकते हैं examples. So जितना हो पा रहा है कीजिए, but answer सारे questions का answer दीजिए, but एक सिर्फ example देना is थोड़ा कम.
Yes sir, sure sir. Sir, one more question.
Yeah.
सर मैं एक्चुअली जब मैं आपने जैसे कहा कि इमोशनल इंटेलिजेंस से और एक मतलब सिलेबस से ही पॉइंट्स उठाना। सर इसमें मेरे ये ऐसे हो रहा है कि मेरे ना सारे आंसर्स एक सिमिलर से लग रहे हैं, मतलब मैं वैरायटी नहीं ला पा रहा। मतलब वो हर क्वेश्चन में मेरे इमोशनल इंटेलिजेंस आता ही है, और अगर मैं नहीं लिखता हूँ तो फिर वो इनकम्प्लीट सा लगता है। मतलब सर इमोशनल इंटेलिजेंस एज अ एग्जांपल बता रहा हूँ, हर जैसे कंपैशन, वो सभी मेरे आंसर सिमिलर दिखने लगे हैं।
हाँ, आई मैं समझ पा रहा हूँ, वो लगते हैं, बट अगर आप देखेंगे किसी भी टॉपर के नोट्स, वो उसी सेम चीज को थोड़े डिफरेंट वे में लिखते हैं। वो इमोशनल इंटेलिजेंस नहीं लिखते, बट उसी और कंपैशन वर्ड बार बार यूज नहीं करते, बट वही सेम चीज को। फॉर एग्जाम्पल, मैं कंपैशन ना लिख के लिखता हूँ गांधी जी तालिस्मान लिखता हूँ, या फिर लिखता हूँ सर्वोदय लिखता हूँ, या फिर लिखता हूँ केयर एथिक्स ऑफ गिलिगन। तो उसी सेम चीज को मैं डिफरेंट एकेडमिक पर्सपेक्टिव से लिख रहा हूँ, rather than just writing compassion and empathy. Yeah, I think we can start. The second question: silence is a big enemy of morality. What does it mean? It means that if there is a case of injustice or there is something which is non-righteous, having no response to that, not raising your voice against that, and just being used to the status quo is also against the very idea of morality. It would be also considered immoral if you're not standing up for what is right or not standing up against injustice. That is the essence of morality, and that you tell how it is important to have a voice against injustice, which would lead to morality in the context of various civil services and various aspects of governance. You could have written one of the quotes of Edmund Burke, which we very commonly we see in the notes and all as well. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. A similar quotation is by Aristotle as well, where he says, if good people do not participate in politics, then they'll have to be punished by being ruled by non-ethical people. But this is a more apt quote where you can say that it is important for good men to do something so that the evil does not get trapped. You can give a lot of examples from historical examples. For example, Gandhiji is voice that he raised against the oppression of Indians in the South Africa, or other people, like against the colonial exploitation of the South Africa. You could have used examples, international examples, like Nelson Mandela's work and his time for independence as well. So similar example you could have given. You could have given the examples of revolutionaries, their voices against the British colonialism as well, to give a perspective example that how it is important to have a point of dissent and have raising your voice against the injustice. Next, you write different perspectives, how there has to be a voice of vigilance, for example, where you have to be vigilant enough in order to democracy to function really well in terms of governance and civil services. This is a model diagram as well, which you can draw. It's not a mandatory to have diagrams in ethics, in my opinion, but wherever you can incorporate, it gives you brownie points. And also it saves up your time if you want to compress a lot of ideas at one go. Where it is talking about silence is outcome because someone wants to escape from the responsibility, or they're living in fear. There is a culture of accepting wrong, or which also encouraging the wrongdoer and the criminal. This all leads to the silence, which in turn is an enemy to the morality. Yeah. How then your first part has to be how any impact of silence to morality and governance, how if there is no voices being raised, how it leads to the ethics does not triumph, is there is perpetuation of corruption. You could write examples. There's a term called Sanskritization of corruption by Kaushik Basu, or there is similarly a concept of Hannah Arendt where she talks about banality of evil. That means in case of Sanskritization of corruption, when the people do not raise the voice against corruption and normalize corruption, rather consider corruption as a means for their social mobility and do not really look down upon corruption, then you tend to normalize the same, which leads to other immoral acts. Similarly, the idea of Hannah Arendt's banality of evil, that also talks about the same thing, that we are normalizing the evil activities by the common ordinary people to an extent that we do not raise voice against them, and any injustice that happens feels it is normal in the society. That a philosophical perspective could have been given. Next, how you have to raise voice against violation of human rights. What happened, we see Nirbhaya case where public protest happened. Another point you could have written about the use of social media as a dissent, where you see a lot of protest and a lot of noise in a good manner is channelized because people start giving their dissent and standing up against for something which is injustice. For example, the recent Porsche case in Pune as well, it was because it got a limelight because of how much it was talked about and people stood up against what was wrong. Next, to talk about the institutional means in order to raise your voice. For example, mention about the different laws. For example, we have RTIs, we have whistleblower acts, we have institutions to whom you can report, for example, CBIs, you have Lokpals. So those also ensure that the voices are heard and silence does not become the norm, so that the morality prevails. Yeah. Another point, how if silence leads to immorality, is that also it encourages complacency. In the conceptualization of PIL, you can give examples of MC Mehta versus Union of India case, and the conceptualization of PILs by P.N. Bhagwati was also on these principles, that the public spirited citizens started raising their voice against the environmental injustices that led to Environmental Protection Act 1986 getting passed on. So from an environmental angle, you can give an angle as well. Next, we can add up things from an environmental international perspectives as well, where we talk about the different voices that is going against climate change and different voices against land degradation. You can give examples of Montreal Protocol, which was an also outcome because how public spirited citizens across the world and the governments did not remain silent and worked upon for the same as well. Those points you can write what, and one part, that how these silence would lead to immorality. Second, you can write the role of civil servants in upholding morality. But what is more important here is to also add another section as a way forward, that how can people get more provisions or platforms to raise voices. One, there can be a top-down approach. What are top-down approaches? In the forms of laws and institutions, like protection of whistleblowers under Whistleblowers Act, the practicing of RTI Act in letter and spirit, having institutions like Lokpal, ED, CBI. These are citizen charter. These are a more top-down approach of accountability and which would ensure a vigilance. How could the second point could be, how could the bottom of approach of vigilance be there in the case of social audits, Gram Sabha, using locals in public policy implementation? That would talk about the bottom up approach of vigilance. Another point could be media. Media, being the fourth pillar of democracy, also ensures silence does not remain one of the the norm, and rather people have their dissent as well. Another, we could have the institutional means, the role of judiciary, using PILs, using petitions and exposing the scams, etc. So their judiciary, in its power of separation of power, also could be one of the organs of vigilance against other forms of government as well. And another, you can use technology as a means to give dissent and give your opinion. in order to not give silence as a norm, which would otherwise lead to immorality. So three parts you can write: the how silence leads to immorality, role of civil servants to ensure silence does not remain, and how the vigilance or the different methods of vigilance, the different methods that would promote raising your voice could be promoted. And you can give a lot of examples for the same: U. Sagayam, Satyendra Dubey, Ashok Khemka, and similar examples for the same. Yeah, we can start with this.
So should I take a shot at it?
Please do. What was the introduction that you wrote for the same?
Sure. So, sir, integrity is about completeness. So, if any part of the system is not working, then the entire system collapses. So, similarly, so one rotten apple like spoils the whole bunch. So, similarly, a civil servant has to have all the values like justice, fairness, compassion, integrated, so as to illustrate the moral integrity. But along with that, the professional efficiency is also required in terms of qualification and experience.
1 second. This is in context of corporate governance in India.
Yes.
Take that as civil services.
So no, corporate govern okay, so corporate में जैसे हम examples दे सकते हैं कि hospitals में doctors है या nurses है. So if they are morally, ethically, they have the moral integrity, but if they do not have the professional competency, then a case may be spoiled. Similarly, if in an organization the top management say they have the profit or the professional efficiency, but they do not have the moral perspective in mind, so that may result in the disharmony among the employees and the stakeholders, and that may eventually lead to the fall of the organization.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah, but I would say a better, like very aptly said, but since it's talking about corporate governance, you could have an introduction to what do you mean by corporate governance and tell for effective corporate governance, moral integrity and professional efficiency are equally important, and a balance between the same is necessary as a way forward. You could have contextualized that as an introduction where you could have written, there is one of the quote by Mervyn King where he says, good corporate governance is about intellectual honesty and not just sticking to rules and regulations. Or any other definition of corporate governance that could be added here as well, and just show that moral integrity and professional efficiency are equally important. Then you write moral integrity in the context of corporate governance as few points. Then the structure would be the professional efficiency, importance of the same in corporate governance, and how the synthesis of moral integrity and professional efficiency is required for corporate governance. So somebody as was mentioning here, it becomes very repetitive for them to have these same values and topics as a headlines. In all of the cases, you do not have to follow that approach. In few of the approaches, you can have these different values and different themes of your syllabus as your arguments. In some, you can have dimensions: political, economical, social, such dimensions. And some cases, you can have dimensions like how does this particular thing affects an family, an individual, a society, a community, to a nation, at international level. In some cases, you can always see how does it affects an institution. For example, how does it affect caste, class, religion, politics? All these institutions are being marriage. All these institutions are being affected. So through different angles you can have, or sometimes you can bring in the perspectives of how does this is affected in the eyes of war, in the eyes of globalization, or a feminist angle to that. So it does not have to be only honesty, integrity, righteousness, EI, and all those things, but through other dimensions and stakeholder approach, you can also analyze. Sorry, just digressed a bit because I just felt like to address this. But yeah, so then we talk about moral integrity and professional efficiency. You can here use a stakeholder approach in corporate governance, that how moral integrity is important for different stakeholders in corporate governance. Who are different stakeholders? One, uh, the company itself. So it has to be moral enough to enhance its reputation or to enhance a trust by providing qualitative products, adhering to rules and regulations. For example, Tata Group has built a reputation and trust for them for so many years. Then we have another stakeholder, the people who are working for them, the talent who is working for that one. That is one of the stakeholders, where you give them fair remuneration. You have one of the topics about work culture. The work culture is more healthy. The safety for women and everyone else is ensured. More diversity is ensured there as well. You can give examples of reports like McKinsey, which tells about that more the diverse the workplaces are, it leads to better productivity as well. Another perspectives are the consumers, the customers. Uh, how the moral integrity is there, because you'll have to, for example, in advertisements, you'll have to be very clear about what you are delivering. There would be no greenwashing, for example, which mention these contemporary terms as well. Where you are not having any using advertisement as a means to what do you say, derail people and try to give them an illusion. So customers become your one point. Another point could be investors, that how you are thorough with your accountancy, with your finances, and are ensuring your shareholders, your investors are also getting their due share. Next, you have your another point of environmental perspective. So you can quote how sustainability is becoming one of the ideas, is also one of the perspectives of moral integrity. Another example in moral integrity is about the maxim of reciprocity through CSR funds, for example. The different programs under moral integrity for the trusteeship of ownership, you can bring Gandhian principle here, where you talk about this approach where the capitalism, he was not against private ownership or capitalism per se, but he wanted trusteeship of ownership. And that is also one of the essence of moral integrity. Another example, how under the moral integrity, how in the time of crisis, it is important for corporates, for public welfare. For example, a lot of corporates like Coal India, Nalco, Indian Oil worked in the crisis of COVID per se, or in disaster management. So those could be examples. Give examples of different CSR programs for moral integrity. That could that could be one part of the question. The second part, as we'll see, is a professional efficiency. As you mentioned, it's not just the ethics that counts, but also the merit. It also about the professional standards. There has to be no compromise on the same. Yeah. For there, we have, again, from different stakeholder perspective, the leaders. There has to be effective leadership, the professional efficiency in leading the same as well. You can have a lot of strategic leaders. To give an example, for example, Sudha Murthy as a leader here, or even the constitution makers as a strategic. Sorry. You cannot give these because it's about corporate governance. So don't talk about, let's say, the part of the public servants, but talk about any corporates leaders. Then you have the point of professional efficiency, may also the importance of innovation, R&D. For example, give examples of Elon Musk, where you are increasing the professional efficiency as well. As the utility of merit, competency, objective evaluation, timely decision management, these become also the professional efficiency. Rather, adding the points like diversity in the workplaces, that would come under professional efficiency. Yeah. But use the terms like attitude, aptitude in these cases as well. These are very much used here. You can use another. Then after you are done with these two parts, there's a way forward. You can write how the synthesis of moral integrity and professional efficiency help. Give examples. You can draw a diagram where you have a Venn diagram where one is talking about profitability, one is talking about ethics, and one is talking about legality. And the convergence is the good corporate governance. One is profitability, legality, and ethical means. And the convergence of these three circles, what you get as an intersection would be what you call as the good corporate governance. Then, and the way forward, you can also add in the committee recommendations of Uday Kotak for good corporate governance. Example, having better representation in the board of governors, having independent directors, representation of women, better accounting, the utilization of CSR funds being released on the websites, more transparency involved in when you are hiring, or more transparency in accounting principles. Those you can end up by giving Uday Kotak example. Yeah, in innovative solutions, I said Elon Musk. You can give Nandan Nilekani, the unofficial CTO of India. And again, Gandhi's sin, the 7 sins we have of Gandhi's, that can be used at multiple places. So please be thorough with Gandhi's 7 sins. Commerce without morality, you could just use that up as a phrase in your conclusion. Yeah. Anybody wants to take a shot at this? Tell the structure. How did you attempt this? All right. So one, since it's talking about wisdom, and it's talking wisdom in what is to reckon with and what to overlook. As in, at what areas should be prioritized, what are the areas should be worked upon, and what it is okay not to take priority in addressing those issues. That is what it is talking. And it's saying, do you agree that such preoccupation of an administration where they're engrossed with the peripheral activities and are ignoring the core issues, does that lead to travesty of justice and effective service delivery? So yes, it does. But as an introduction, you can always, when you talk about wisdom, wisdom is one of the cardinal virtues of Plato, right? So you could just mention, as Plato mentions wisdom as one of the cardinal virtues, it encapsulates the aptitude in order to use your experience, use your mental aptitude to prioritize the different issues at hand. Then we talk about key, yes, when the administration is engrossed in peripheral activities and does not give attention to the core issues, that leads to ineffective service delivery and give different perspectives for the same. Yeah. So how important, for example, it is important to decide on the priorities. For example, when there has to be less resources are there for a city administration, more utilization should be for sanitation and clean water drinking as compared to beautification of walls per se. Giving such examples. Focus on urgent issues. For example, in cases of disaster management or in cases of such cyclones or earthquakes, rather than just complying to rules and regulations and paperwork, urgent issues of rehabilitations, urgent issues of evacuation should be given more emphasis. Other examples you could give, for example, in case of policing, you'll have to understand the core issues of for that particular issue. That one point could be that do not just attack on a superficial causes of any crime, but the core issues of it. For example, in dealing with Naxalism, it is not only necessary to have punishments for the Naxalists, but also understand their relative deprivation, understand their demands against poverty and hunger to solve the same. Again, yeah, dilution of serious matters, again, prioritizing point, and you can give various examples for the same as well. For example, when you are managing a primary healthcare versus a tertiary healthcare, if your primary healthcare systems is not functioning well, then it is of no importance if you have specializations, if you have tertiary healthcare system, you're funding for the same. So that those you can give few examples for the same. Another point, like how does it like affect the service delivery, is that there is a red tapeism that happens. You usually see these the bureaucracy is committed in compliancing with the means. There you can bring in the philosophical perspectives. You tell by Jeremy Bentham's or by Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative, where you are giving more importance on the means rather than the ends, then that is might not be the best use case. Rather, on utilitarian perspectives to ensuring the outcome of your activities is actually leading to better and maximum benefits is something that should be carried upon. For example, here in Jharkhand, 20 people died due to denial of PDS, as there was the linkages between Aadhaar and PDS was not done properly. Yeah, exactly. But since it is asking about, give me a second. Yeah, I'm sorry. But since it's asking about critical evaluation, talk about at least a few that it is also important to have attention on peripheral issues and not completely ignore out the same. Then maybe talk about importance of deontological perspectives, where it is important to be adhering to rules and regulations. Otherwise, it could lead to erosion of public trust. It could lead to corruption. It could lead to lawlessness, and law and order could be broken as well. So peripheral issues are also important. And then write that if peripheral issues are not given due importance, then these issues will never get never be addressed. So there has to be a parallel attention to be given. So then as a way forward, you can see what can be done. One, you can use the idea of golden mean or Madhyama Marga by Buddhism or golden mean by Aristotle, that a balance should be given. Second, a prioritization could be done. Third, non-equitable distribution of resource management could be done, where more allocation would be given to the core issues, but some aspect would be given to the peripheral issues as well. Third, delegation by the civil servants, where they are invested in the core issues and they can delegate the non-core issues to the other members of the bureaucracy as well. So in this way, you can add up like both the perspectives, but give more importance to having importance to core issues. Then talk about peripheral issues are also important, and then talk about what is the solution to manage both. So here already the question is asking, in your opinion, what measures can be adopted to uplift the core values in the society? But it is asking also, there's a context of corruption given here. So you'll have to link both of these things. And one, like how the failure of core values is leading to corruptions being manifested, and what can be done to uplift the core values. You could just write in one line or make a flow chart or a like a chart or something to understand what are the core values in the society, to give a context that what are actually the core values. Everything that we discuss about core values like righteousness, integrity, honesty, probity, compassion, empathy. Yeah. So bit of a context of corruption, and then what are the core values. You can write corruption as a manifestation of failure of core values. Few points on that, and then major attention, because the question itself asks about how can you uphold the core values. Then you go to that as a second part. So corruption as a manifestation of failure of core values. Then there is a lack of integrity and fairness because of greed being the major motivator which leads to fall of integrity and fairness. Next, there is a Sanskritization of corruption, where corruption is not looked down upon. Rather, corruption is utilized as a means to improve one's lifestyle and for their own social mobility. So that could be used. That is a manifestation of one's degradation of core values. Ineffective laws and ineffective employment of these institutions who ensures the core values are respected. The breakdown of state machinery leading to manifestation of corruption. Lack of accountability, lack of justice system, that could also be different ways. But ensure you are done. 50% of your answer should be introduction, context building, and this part. And next 50 parts should be about how you measures to adopt, uplift the core values in the society. How do you do that? As you're saying, there was another approach to write it from an stakeholder perspective, from an individual to family to a society to a nation to an international level. So at individual level, as Abdul Kalam quote, again, very famous, that we talk about how we say that if a country is want to be corruption free, then 3 societal members are your father, mother, and teacher. So the process of socialization, where children are talked about moral values and ethics right from the childhood, and in education institutions, value education system is given using ethical books on ethics, religious textbooks, that tales, jatakas, and other religious textbooks. With that, such socialization could happen. Promote of civic engagement, example, participation, NCC, NSS, other volunteers groups, scouts and guides, that also ensures moral values. At societal values, having role models, strengthening the community leaders, role of medians, civil societies, NGOs, those becomes another level. Another way how you can uphold is using an institutional means. In institutional means, 2 things. 1, institutions. 2, laws. In laws, you have your RTI acts, you have your whistleblower acts, you have your Lokpal acts. For institutions, you have the institutions of CBI, you have institutions of ED, Lokpal. All these institutions would come for ensuring corruption is not manifested. Another perspective is eternal vigilance by citizens themselves. For a bottom-up approach, for example, social audits or involvement of locals in environmental impact assessments. Another aspect could be the corporate angle, where corporate social where corporate governance would also ensure the transparency and accountability and fairness in accounting. All those principles would also ensure there is corruption does not happen. Another perspective is also how that the nexus between bureaucracy, capitalists, and politicians be broken. This is something which has been talked about in Vora committee, where it talks there is a nexus between politicians, bureaucracy, and capitalists, leading to corruption. So the maximum of checks and balances could happen, where conflict of interest and adherence to code of conduct and rules, this would ensure this breakdown of this nexus. Government we discussed. And another perspective you should add is technology as a means of vigilance, where greater digitalization, e-governance, UPI, Aadhaar, all these new perspectives and new ideas which have come up, that would also ensure. Another way you can write about the emerging technologies. Emerging technologies, for example, AI was used for a fraud detection model to understand the bogus registrations under Ayushman Bharat scheme. Similarly, fraud detection under identifying the actual target beneficiaries against PDS system. So using of blockchain methods to ensure more credibility in direct benefit transfers. So these are also few of the ideas that you can put forward to ensure more accountability and transparency. Yeah. This we discussed. Yeah. And you can conclude by any of the quotations you would have prepared for corruption. Or you can use, like, let's say, the concept of banality of evil by Hannah Arendt, where you see that it has to be, there has to not just political sanctions, but social sanctions should be made against corruption so that corruption is perceived as a general evil and people look down upon corruption and not a means to enable their or upgrade their lifestyles, which the banality of evil concept by Hannah Arendt as well talks about the same. Yeah.
सर मेरा क्वेश्चन था सर अकॉर्डिंग टू मी सर मैंने अपने अकॉर्डिंग ये स्ट्रक्चर बनाया था कि करप्शन कैसे वो नॉर्मलाइज हो गया जो कोर वैल्यूज के। तो सर सेकंड पार्ट में ऐसे होना चाहिए ना कि मे बी आई एम रॉन्ग कि सोशलाइजेशन में हम कोर वैल्यूज को कैसे ठीक कर सकते हैं। मेन वाला तो वो था। तो और अगर मुझे ऐड करना हो तो मैं डायग्राम में ऐड कर दूं और अदर वेज कैसे हो सकते हैं करप्शन को ठीक करने के जो अभी आपने बताए, जस्ट अ स्मॉल डायग्राम। बट मेन वो नहीं था कि फैमिली मदर फादर जो हमारा सोशलाइजेशन का टॉपिक है।
That I'm saying कि the core values should be the 50%. That's what I said कि everything else कि core values क्या है, corruption कैसे core values के degradation में से हो रहा है, that is 50%. And आपका major should be these core values. Core values जिससे हम बात किए कि core values through your individual level, through family level, through society level, through media, having role models, having community leaders. वो सब पे आप ज्यादा बात करेंगे, फिर लास्ट के टाइम पे वही डायग्राम के थ्रू एंड ऑल आप इंश्योर कर सकते हैं कि अपार्ट फ्रॉम दिस कोर वैल्यूज बीइंग अपहेल्ड, these some ways in which by upholding core values and effective implementation how corruption could be minimized. So major perspectives was to be कैसे core values हो पाएगा। सिंस इधर करप्शन के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में आपको पूछा है, वो आप डायग्राम के साथ बता सकते हैं, स्पेस और टाइम एडजस्ट करके। Not much focus on the legislation और corruption को कैसे कम किया जा सकता है, उसको एड्रेस करना है, but कम स्पेस और टाइम के साथ।
गुड इवनिंग सर, माय नेम इज रेक्स। मुझे दो क्वेरीज है पूछने के लिए। फर्स्ट एंड फॉरमोस्ट इज, जब आप आंसर लिखते थे एथिक्स के लिए तो आप क्या क्या पॉइंट्स फोकस करते थे? लाइक कीवर्ड्स पे ज्यादा फोकस करते थे, एग्जांपल्स पे फोकस करते थे, या बैलेंस आउट करने के लिए? और क्या आपने ये डेफिनेशंस और कोड सब तैयार करके रखा था वैसे?
So I had this table which I was mentioning about this previous पर जयंत नहाता, उनका एक टेबल मैंने देखा था। he had all these values, उसका एक कोटेशन, उसका प्रोफेशनल एग्जाम्पल, पर्सनल एग्जाम्पल, ब्यूरोक्रेटिक एग्जाम्पल, एक उन्होंने बनाया था टेबल
टैबुलर फॉर्म में। जी सर,
टैबुलर फॉर्मेट में। एंड सो यस, सो सारे वैल्यूज एंड ऑल के लिए मैंने कोटेशंस वगैरह सब कुछ प्रिपेयर किया हुआ था। एंड मैंने कुछ कुछ उसके ऊपर से व्हाट डिड आई वैल्यू एडिशन डिड कि ये जो फिलोसोफर्स के आइडिया है, दोज आई प्रिपेयर्ड फ्रॉम स्कूल ऑफ लाइफ, जिसको मैं ऐड करने की कोशिश करता था। और कुछ कुछ चीजें थी जो टर्म्स फ्रेजेस थी जो कि मैं यूज कर सकता था, जैसे अभी मैं बात कर रहा था करप्शन हो गया तो उसमें मैं बात करूं हन्ना एरेंट की कौशिक बासु संस्कृताइजेशन ऑफ करप्शन की, जैनिज्म की जो प्रिंसिपल्स होती हैं अपरिग्रह और अनेकांतवाद, बुद्धिज्म की होती है मध्यम मार्ग। सो ये सब चीजें एक कॉम्बाइनेशन बना ली थी कि उसको कैसे मैं इफेक्टिवली यूज कर सकूं।
जी सर, ओके, थैंक यू सर।
Hello, sir.
हाँ जी,
Audible?
या यू आर।
Sir, my question is regarding sociology. Sir, in 2025, I'm going to give my first attempt. Sir, I'm confused regarding my sociology optional, that how should I go with preparing my notes? Did you made your notes from scratch, or you had some base notes already taken from any topper, previous topper?
Yeah, completely indebted to Neha Bhosle, All India rank 15. She was, I can't recall what year, but 3-4 years senior. Her notes were my base notes. Since I was a working aspirant, I was working full time with IOCL. I did not have time to attend lectures or anything, so I relied on her notes. Wherever I had doubts, I used to use internet for conceptual clarity, but her notes were my base notes and did my value addition from the model answers of Vision. But her notes were base notes, but I made my notes out of that. So what I did is that from her notes were very comprehensive. So I ensured I decompress that and write in a way, in a structured way in which I can revise more. So I made my notes, but based on her notes.
Okay, so sir, one more question. So, basically, how you went with the notes was you first gave them a reading, and then you understood from that, and you made some. You used those notes as a book. Is
Yes.
that
Yes.
what you did?
So topic wise, if one topic I'm reading from there, and then if something I can understand, cannot understand, I would Google that. If while the process of Googling, I'll get something good, then I'll integrate that. So one topic I'll read and then I'll make notes.
And after completing that particular topic, you will also refer to the previous year questions as well.
So after the entire chapter used to be done, I used to go through previous year questions, and then no, actually what I used to do before also write, like making my notes. After
Yeah.
reading her notes for one topic, I used to go through PYQs first and then make the notes to understand ki from this topic what questions are asked. So tuning with the PYQs, such emphasis I would give ki acha, where it is caste system, so what are they asking in caste system? That is how I'll focus while making my notes. So
Okay,
before
sir.
even making notes, I used to just skim through the PYQs.
Okay, sir. So, sir, I can skip those standard books which are being referred, like her numbers and extra, etc.
I mean,
They're so bulky.
they are, but if you have time, I mean, personal opinion, you can. I have done that, but in paper one, it becomes difficult for topics like the thinkers, at least. For
Yeah.
that, I would, and it took me a lot of time. I had to go through a lot of materials for the same as well. For at least few topics where I did not have conceptual clarity, especially paper one, you can look for books. If not Harlambus, then at least IGNU materials are good, IGNU PDFs. Or there
Okay,
was a
sir.
book, Essential Sociology by Nitin Singhania. That was also sometimes I referred for conceptual clarity, or where the material was not enough from Neha Bhosle ma'am's notes.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Sir?
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. So regarding this ethics question only. So for example, we took this question, silence is a big enemy of morality. Right. So essentially, this is an open-ended statement. So how do you break it down into different dimensions? What is the process that you follow?
Okay. So here I basically am talking about the basic premises ki you'll have to stand up for injustice. Give me a second. So in that perspectives, I found out different dimensions in which I could have. There could be political injustice, economic injustice from an environmental perspectives, from an IR perspective, role of, then these are the different dimensions. Then I'll talk about the different institutions. Institutions could be different legislations, different these bodies, media is one of the cases. So dimensions, institutions, a mix of both, the one I would generate points for.
Okay, so like whenever you see a question, you first brainstorm whatever you make a collection of whatever comes into your mind related to that topic, and then group them into various dimensions. Is that so?
Yeah, but I did not have really time to brainstorm. So by practice, it came organically that how would I write it. But it used to be all these things, and either a stakeholder approach or a different dimensional approach. But certain things that you definitely always can mention in most of the answers, like use of civil societies and NGOs, use of technology, use of public-private partnership or CSR. These are the things which are always there in my points. So those angles anyway become an organic point.
Okay, okay. And the last question that we took, which is corruption question. So the core values of society, whenever I read core values of society, my mind automatically goes to the preamble, right? There is equality, there is justice, liberty, but I don't know what kind of examples would go with that. Like, how do I add value if I'm taking the preamble approach?
So if you're taking a preamble approach, then you can have a lot of legal aspects to that, or the provisions of the government, or different schemes approach, like what are the schemes which are working for social justice perspectives for equality, or the constitutional principles of fraternity, like the fundamental duties, Article 51A. or as sir was mentioning, you can take help from DPSPs as well for ensuring, like talking about equality, justice on those cases. Or the ideas of different philosophers, like Amartya Sen talks about capability approach. Utilitarianism talks about maximum benefit to maximum people. There is a school of thought called existentialist school of thought, which talks about individual freedoms and rights. So there you talk about liberty and freedom. So those approaches you can take. Can we take one last question? I'm running out of time. I'll have to be somewhere.
Okay, साक्षी आप पूछ लो. लता एक सवाल पूछ चुकी हैं. साक्षी आप पूछ लो.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, may I?
साक्षी पूछो. लता
as you said, आप पूछ चुके हैं.
हाँ, साक्षी आप बोलो.
Sir, can you please share the timeline, like by what month you completed with the subjects and along with the note making, like just a rough timeline, like by September and by January, what were you done with, and was it possible for you to just give like 8-9 hours on daily basis? कभी ऐसा होता था that 3-4 days like you were not able to study. That's it.
So I'll just be brief about it because it's an open-ended question. But no, I never had 9 hours, 10 hours in my preparation because I was working. So I had a 9 to 5 or more than 8 hours of job. So I used to have 5-6 hours on a good day on weekdays and try to make the best use of it. But on weekends I used to read 8 to 10 hours. So yeah, but my timeline was I started preparation from February 2022. So till December 2022, I was doing 3 things parallelly. One was reading these basic books and standard books, Lakshmikant, Spectrum, NCERT, so on and so forth, for 1 slot. 1 slot was for my optional, and 1 slot was reading a current affairs magazine and making mains oriented notes. So I made my mains notes right from day 1 from these current affair magazine that I was following on a weekly basis, and I was giving tests on every Sunday on the topics of the current affairs that I read for. So organically, my mains notes were done till December for mostly GS2 and GS3 because those come in current affairs. For in the month of November and December, I sat down and saw the keywords of each of syllabus and saw what topics where I do not have notes. For that, I sat down with the yearly magazine of previous year. So 2022 के mains 365 से I picked up the topics जो कि मेरे current affair magazine से नहीं बने थे notes, like geography, history, कुछ topics of GS2, GS3 also that I did, and GS4 also बीच में I took around 2-3 weeks and had done GS4 as well. So till December, mid January तक I did this. फिर February से I started preparation for prelims exclusive.